So tonight I'd like to introduce Erika Morgan. We heard her speak in San Diego at an all-day event for community choice energy, and it was very informative, and now she's going to tell us more about her particular experience in it. So I'd like to turn it over to Erika. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here and really appreciate all of you coming out on Monday night. So thank you for your interest. I'm going to rattle along here for a while, and then at the end we hopefully will have plenty of time for questions. So unless it's a burning question and I've been not clear, let me get through all the stuff that I'm going to say. If you don't mind, write your question down or hang on to it in your head so that we can have a good discussion at the end. So as Joy has said, my name is Erika Morgan, and I serve as the Executive Director of the San Diego Energy District. More than anything, I am a specialist in managing change. That's what I've done my professional career, both in terms of starting and growing nonprofits, but also consulting to businesses of all different sizes. But more than that, I've been a follower of the clean energy industry since way before there was a clean energy industry, before there was an industry at all. And we did it all through nonprofits who helped people understand that there was some benefit for doing the right thing, even if it wasn't necessarily cost effective at the moment. So I have been doing that stuff for more decades than I care to say. But along the way, I worked in Massachusetts as Deputy Commissioner of Energy at the time that they were undoing their electricity system, as they had been doing here previously. And we all watched as California did that, and we said, don't do it that way. So then I went to Maine, which is my home state, and was Deputy Commissioner for Environmental Protection up there. And there, after leaving that, they deregulated at the same time I was there, and after that, I went on my own and basically said, you know what? If we are going to get the ability to choose where our electrons come from, I want clean ones, thank you very much. So I founded a nonprofit group in the year 2000 called Maine Interfaith Power and Light. How many of you have heard of California Interfaith Power and Light? There is one. There is now an Interfaith Power and Light group in almost every state. And what they do is they work on issues of clean energy and energy justice and energy democracy within the faith community. So they are powerful everywhere. Anyway, I've been working on this whole notion of choice since then, since the late 90s and early 2000s, on what does electricity choice mean. And I continue to pursue it. I'm a volunteer also. Nobody's paying us yet. We'll keep working on that. Because I believe in the need for speed. And as you'll hear as I go along, there's the opportunity to be speedy here, and we need it. Okay, so who is San Diego Energy District? It is also a 501c3 nonprofit founded in the year 2011 to put community choice aggregation on the radar screen in San Diego, in this southern part of the state. It was founded by two energy visionaries, one of whom continues to be our chairman of the board right now, Lane Sharman from Solana Beach. One of the reasons I need my notes is because I can get distracted and keep going off on tangents far too long. So forgive me if I appear to be reading, it's because I need to keep on track.
Excuse me, what did you just say about, I don't know, you just said something about having to do with the, I guess the action team or the energy? The whole thing's about energy.
Yeah, San Diego Energy District
Yeah.
is the 501c3 that I work kind of for as a volunteer. And it's like many of your local 501c3s too. Voluntary organizations, a lot of people who care a lot, doing a lot on their own time.
Okay.
And that's what we do too. So we work with the Climate Action Campaign in San Diego. We work with 350.org. We work with the Sierra Club. We are all partners in the same effort to save the planet. San Diego Energy District works on choice pretty much exclusively. The only variant on that is that we are looking ahead to the clean electricity grid. It's what is the system turning into? And that's what we're pushing for, the cleaner options at every choice point along the way. And community choice is a very powerful and important starting point. Okay, so here's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about what is choice, past, present, and future. I'm going to talk about how you make it happen. We might go through that a little bit more quickly depending on where's the clock. I need to know how I'm doing on time. And then the action component, because there's a lot going on, both at the county level and at the city level, and even at the state level. And then hopefully we'll have time for questions, answers, discussion. Okay, now I want to start this little section off with a question. What exactly are we looking for in an electricity provider? Maybe just think about that for a minute. Is it something we're getting, something we'd like to get, something, that happens when you flip the switch? You want kilowatt hours, right? And you want them 24/7, 365. Is it stuff you expect to hear on the news or not hear on the news about your provider? Is it, we all want clean power? And is that going to work for everybody? Some of those things that we need from our electricity provider take the form of the way we're treated when we call in to get our bill in, figured out, or when you have a question about your bill, or how much the bill is or isn't. So there are customer-facing expectations. There are technical expectations. We do expect the power to stay on. We don't expect the voltage levels to drop and hurt our appliances. And then maybe we actually expect some degree of fairness, responsiveness, some community-centered response from our provider. Okay, so this question of expectations, what are we actually looking for? I think is one that will come to play as we think about our choices. So I'm going to start with a little story. Earlier this spring, I opened a newsletter from what is now called MCE. It used to be called Marin Clean Energy, but it's expanded beyond Marin, so they would like you to just call them MCE. And it's actually the first of the California Choice organizations. Can everybody hear me all right with this thing? Is it too loud? No? Okay, good. So their newsletter had 3 stories in it. The first one was to recognize the City of San Rafael's Chamber of Commerce's Environment Award. And in that award, a number of those businesses had all opted up to 100% green electricity. Okay, so that's nice. They recognized the Chamber for recognizing the businesses, 100% clean electricity. Those businesses have the choice in Marin territory. And maybe our utility would also say something nice about someone who bought their 100% green power, because SDG&E does have 100% offer as well. Okay, so that was the first story. Second story was that MCE announced a partnership with the city of Richmond to bring energy efficiency to their businesses. And by that, they didn't just mean, you can have a rebate. They meant they put out door-to-door teams going to businesses to talk to them about getting energy audits done. And then they also put up upfront money to make those changes happen. So it's not just you put up the money, you get the rebate. You'd still get the rebate, but in this case, the City of Richmond, working with MCE, would give you the money up front, okay? So is this something our utility would do? Not likely. They'll give you the rebate, but only if you come up with the money first. Third story, MCE actually dropped its rates. Dropped its rates for the second year in a row. 3.7% down was the tip, with the decrease for a typical residential customer was 5%. And the CEO was quoted in this as saying, choosing an energy service provider, choosing an energy service with more renewable content can, in fact, cost less. Now, is that something our utility is going to do? Lower their rates? All right, so next, we're going to talk about how this happens. Have any of you ever seen this diagram before? Some are saying yes. Yay,
We have
okay,
copies
it's
back
getting
there.
around. It's got copies back there, awesome, okay. So, the right to form a community choice aggregation, that's what CCA stands for, a very clunky term. CCA, some people call it CCE for community choice energy or community choice electricity. Those things are virtually the same. They get used interchangeably. I tend to say the choice program, community choice program. That's the way I talk about it. But the right to form this was created by the Assembly in the year 2002. And other states also have something similar, but the California program is very strong. And the reason it's strong is because by vote of a public jurisdiction, a city, a town, a county, a collection of cities, they can vote to do it, and then everybody is automatically in. You can opt out at any time. But this structure is called an opt-in structure, and it's what enables the pool to start at its largest size and therefore get its best prices right off the bat. When I formed my first choice programs in the year 2000, it was totally opt-in, which meant that it took us 2 years and $100,000 of grant money to get a pool of, drum roll please, 3,000 people. Because most people are not paying attention to their electricity bill. So opt-out in the California law makes it a very strong proponent. Okay, so this diagram shows you the basics, the three parties to the arrangement to deliver power to your house. In the olden days, the pre-choice days, there are actually only two parties. There's you on the customer end, and there's the utility. The utility makes all the decisions about where the kilowatt hours are going to come from, what kind of kilowatt hours they're going to be, how much they're going to price them at. All of those decisions are made by the utility. We don't get any choice in the matter. When a community choice district is formed, we introduce a third party, and that's the choice district. The city, the town, the nonprofit created by them, that entity, that program, now has the ability to decide where we're going to get the kilowatt hours from, and what kind they're going to be, and how much we're going to pay for them, and how many we're going to buy from the wholesale markets, and how many we're going to create right here in our own community. That's what they get to decide. The utility still delivers all the kilowatt hours. They still provide the bill. The bill looks exactly the same, except has a little line on it that says, your kilowatt hours are now coming from San Diego Community Choice, or whatever it's called. Okay. The CCAs also have a lot of other abilities. They can set their own rates because they have to cover the cost of the power they're going to buy. They have to know, what the margin is going to be to serve you, but then they set their own rates. They are nonprofit public entities. They are fully transparent. Every meeting is open to the public, so you know exactly what's getting paid for what and who's getting paid what. They have no shareholders other than the public, all of us. They operate their own programs, so they can run energy efficiency programs, they can offer rate programs. We're going to talk about some of those more in a minute. There are a couple of common structures. One is a city can do it itself. This is what the city of Lancaster has done. This is what the city of San Diego is talking about doing. This is what the city of San Jose is already doing. It can be a program of a collection of cities or counties. And my next slide, there are many that are banding together to do that. Okay, let's just stop on that one there. So this slide answers the question, where does the choice come in again exactly? So this slide also comes from MCE, Marin County. And it basically shows you what your choices would be. So this gray bar on the left here is what the customer in PG&E territory would have before choice. Or if they opted out, they would still have it again. This is the default product that PG&E is delivering. Okay? You'll notice that second from that side over there, the gray bar, PG&E also has 100% renewable product. Now, the other choices on here, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, oh sorry, 3 of them, are Marin County's choices, MCE's products that they put up there. And in the top line, we're comparing the percent of renewables that they offer. All of Marin's are higher than PG&E's 30%. Okay? Because that's one of the things about the investor-owned utilities. They basically can get to 30%, but they're probably not going to go above that until the legislature tells them to. You know, we have some discussion underway about telling them to get bigger, but the choice programs gives you a chance to do that sooner. The second line here is the delivery charge. You'll notice that's the same for everybody. Just on a per kilowatt hour basis, everybody pays the same thing. That's the price of keeping the wires going, and that's what they do. The next line, the second row of numbers, the electric generation line. This is going to vary because the kilowatt hours are going to cost different amounts based on where they come from. So here's PG&E's price. Marin's beating it. You'll see 121 versus 92. Then their 100% product, 100% renewables in brown in the middle, their electric generation cost is still less than PG&E's cost. The last thing to point out here is, well, not the last, but this line at the bottom, added PG&E fees. That's what's commonly called as the exit fee. And everyone who jumps away from their investor-owned utility is going to pay that exit fee, including PG&E's own customers who buy 100%. Even with the extra fee, you'll notice that their default product is pretty much exactly the same, but it gets you a higher fraction of renewables. The others may be a little bit higher because you're again getting a higher fraction of renewables. Basically, every choice program has a slide like this somewhere on their website because they're all going to offer one product that matches the utilities, and they pretty much all offer 100% product. Some of them offer more than that. But this is where the choice comes in. Okay, let's go to the next thing here. Now, where are we going? An overview. I have to update this slide a lot because they are growing in number. So when I did it last fall, there were only 5. Now there are 9 up here. And the totals are starting to add up. So this shows you when they launched, how many customer accounts they have, load, and the minimum renewables that's in their default product. Okay? And I want to stop a moment on this most recent one, PRIME. And what that stands for is Pico Rivera Innovative Municipal Energy. Just launched September 1st. Pico Rivera is located in southeastern LA County. Some of you may know of it. Just on the edge, southern edge of the San Gabriel Valley. The town has about 64,000 residents. Median income of about $56,000. It's 92% Latino and Hispanic. And its community has decided to go ahead and form a choice district, and they launched with 3 products. The first product is called Prime Power. It's 50% renewable. The second one is called Prime Future. It's 100% renewable. And their third product is called Prime Partner, which is an enhanced net metering product. Do any of you in here have solar systems? Yeah. So if you do, you know what net metering is. You get to a 1-for-1 exchange. Under this product, they will still, it's 1-for-1 at the retail value, but then after that, they will pay you for your excess energy at a particular rate. And I think now in SDG&E territory, if you produce more than you use, you don't get it. It's just wiped off your bill. But these guys, if you produce enough to add up to $100, they'll actually cut you a check. So in Pico Rivera, that's what it means to be a partner. Okay. Now, here's what's coming. I'm not going to take the time to go through all of these, but you notice right at the top of the list, LA County. LA County is getting ready to launch for their unincorporated portions of the county. And 9 cities that have so far signed up, and it's open to any city in LA County that wants to join. Again, I'm not going to go through all these, but I do want to shout out the first community choice program in San Diego County. It's going to be in little tiny Solana Beach, 13,000 people, that's it. Not a lot of accounts, but they're going to do it anyway, and they are doing so very prudently. They have had 2 different studies that for various reasons the city didn't end up paying for. And they have set this whole thing up in such a way that they will not come out of pocket with any upfront costs, and the general fund is not at risk directly. And the reason they did that, or not, we know the reason, it's good prudent sense to run your city and build something like this with somebody else's money. The way they were able to do it is because they made the consultants who are doing the work at risk until such time as the program is producing kilowatt hours. And then the consultants will get paid off out of the revenue generated by the program. So they will get paid. They'll just get paid in the future when the program is actually running. So hooray for Solana Beach. They are leading the way. Okay, now, so the best source of information about CCAs is this website. It's called Clean Power Exchange, and it's created by the folks who started Sonoma Clean Power, the second choice program in the state. And basically this map is online, and you can hover over any county, and it'll show you all the cities in the county, and it'll tell you the CCA status of every city in every county in the state. And it takes a lot of work to keep this up to date, I gotta tell you. The one thing to note is that there are some areas in California that are not eligible. Municipally owned power systems are exempt from all of this. They can't have competition in the same way. So the Imperial Irrigation District, for example, or LADWP, for example, or SMUD, they're municipal utilities. They will never be able to do a choice district. That doesn't mean they can't be active though. SMUD is starting to sell some services to one of the emerging districts in Yolo County, City of Davis. SMUD is going to provide a lot of their services. Okay, so as of this month, there are over 300 cities that are exploring this in some way. Okay, now that I've shown you how fast this is moving, I want to show you one of the implications, because remember I talked about speed a while ago? What we're seeing now is the fracturing, one could say, of a very old style of business. The regulated utility model has been around for 100 years. It's done a lot of things right for us, but it's been unable to move with the times. As quickly as the technologies have moved, all of us who have solar, all of us who are wanting a little bit more choice than we have, what this chart shows us is the amount of power that is now coming through the CCAs and how that's going to grow over time. So right here, you know, these are the first 2 CCAs, okay, and in these years, 2016 and 2017, the numbers that I've showed you have started to add up, and they are providing a bigger share of the electricity that's going into the state. The very top line represents the roughly 200,000 gigawatt hours that's the total used in the state. But if you look out in 2020, that green line is the projection of the power that will be moving through the choice programs. The top 2 boxes, they're only 40% of that line. That's what's left for the investor-owned utilities, all 3 of them. So this notion, we're changing this world. This world is starting to change. And the utilities, the investor-owned utilities understand this. PG&E and SoCal Edison have already said, you know what, we're not going to fight you anymore. We're going to be wires companies, and we're going to be good at being wires companies. Unfortunately, in San Diego County, we have the last one, and it's not going to be happy being a wires company. We'll say more about that in a minute. But the bottom line is, and this comes as a quote out of the study that put this chart together, if CCAs continue to spread at the current rate, CCA energy providers will be the dominant procurers of electricity generation by 2020. Okay, so that's my intro. Now this is how we get there. Yeah.
Can I just something this bug me? So, who's going to be liable for fires when the wires start?
The investor-owned utilities are still the wire companies. They still have all the obligation for the wires, even when there's a CCA in place. None of that changes.
So they have liability and no revenue?
They will have the revenue from the delivery charge.
Okay.
The line that's on there that everybody pays.
Scary looking at the kind of liability they're looking at now with that reduced revenue.
Well, and they may have to be thinking about how efficiently they run their operations.
How quickly they can
Yeah.
increase prices.
Their revenue will change. They have a lot of things in the pipeline to change the way the delivery charge is calculated also. And we'll say some more about that in a minute. Let me, if you don't mind, keep going to get through this. And then we'll come back and have some time for discussion. So this is the roadmap we use on the implementation side. Don't try to read it. It shows the full path from stage 1, where it's a gleam in somebody's eye and a topic of conversation at the grassroots, all the way to stage 5, where it's a program that's been launched. And without going into a lot of detail here, each one of the stages has a critical milestone. So one of those critical milestones right at the beginning is the jurisdiction needs to vote. And that's one of the challenges that you all have in the unincorporated county, because Fallbrook is not incorporated, you can't vote. You have to make your input felt through the Board of Supervisors. So we'll come back to that. Anyway, this is too complicated. We can talk more about it if you're interested in a bit. So on the implementation side, there are a lot of pieces to this. It's not a totally simple thing, but it's also not rocket science. So under the heading of risks, a lot of folks will maintain that there is a technical risk, and that's why we need to have a feasibility study. Well, as the experience is accumulating with all of these entities that are now up and running, technical feasibility is pretty well proven. It is possible to do this, and to do it in such a way that you can save money for your constituents doing it. Financial risks. Financial risks, there are financial risks, just as there are financial risks in starting any new business. You know, there's always the risk that you could mess up and do something wrong. What's been clear so far is that all of the CCAs that have been formed and operated are being managed very prudently and very cautiously. So what that means is in the first couple of years, one of their main objectives is to build a cushion, to build reserves, so that they are able to respond to things that were not anticipated. And one of those things that's often not anticipated is changes in the exit fee. But all of the CCAs so far have been able to weather changes in the exit fee and still keep their prices low or lowering because they have built up the reserves to do that. There are lots of ways to be conservative in this. One of them is the reserve. The other way is to plan that a lot of people are going to opt out, and therefore plan your power purchase on that basis. What we've seen in experience is that the opt-out rate, the people who are saying, you know what, I'd really rather stay with SDG&E, is much lower than people think. So when they're making a budget, they assume 1 out of 5 people is going to opt out. It's been, 3%, not 20%. Okay, benefits. This is a summary list. I'm going to go into some of the details in a moment on some of them. The first one on the list is choice. You get a choice. You really can opt back and stay with your incumbent utility if you want to. And you get a lot of notices about that. You'll be told 2 times before the launch date, another 2 times in writing to your house after the launch date, and it's 24/7 on the website. You can opt out at any time. Okay, so second benefit, cleaner supply faster. So we've already seen that most of them are launching, not with 25 or 30%, which is the default product now, but with 50% or more as their renewable fraction. So right from day one, it's getting it cleaner. You may save money on the rates. You are more likely to save money because of the programs that they put together, the energy efficiency and some of the feed-in tariffs for solar folks, for enhanced net metering for solar folks. They are all locally responsive in a way. I don't want to come across as slamming our utilities. As in comparison, we do not have the opportunity to sit on decision-making meetings that SDG&E is having. You will with a choice district. Local economic development. The more robust and local the renewable supply that the CCA develops and buys, the more economic development benefit there is. And I'm going to factoid on that in a minute. And then, of course, climate mitigation. So, okay. There is a way to do this wrong. Look up. What do you mean? The way to do this wrong is to let it all be about just buying power off wholesale markets and not about building power locally. Because if that's what you're doing, you're just creating a co-op that's just going to go buy cheap power off the wholesale markets, and then you turn right around and you don't build a cushion and you don't reinvest, then you lose a lot of the community value that is possible through this tool. It's not automatic. Some parts are automatic because the daylight part, so that's the first thing, transparency and community engagement. Because these are public entities, they do have to be transparent. They have to publish minutes, they have to publish agendas, they have to publish meeting dates, and their guidance, their governing board is going to be either elected officials in the city model or folks that represent the communities in a shared community model. So there's a lot more transparency than there is in any utility presently, unless municipal utility. But then this local build-out plan, that's what I was talking about. This is where the real community benefit comes from. This is the commitment that the Choice program makes to build the renewable facilities locally and to bring those jobs into the community. It could take the form of, they have a special rate in Marin, that 100% solar rate, through a feed-in tariff on the commercial side, which basically says, if you will put a solar project on your commercial building, we will pay you an advantaged rate for that. And they turn around and they sell those kilowatt hours to all of us who want to buy 100% solar. So this is flexibility that these programs have. Okay. So I'm going to end this little section on implementation with several facts. So first, so what are the benefits for these three groups? First, the customers. Financial benefits come in a couple of forms: lower cost kilowatt hours, savings from energy efficiency and energy management programs, and the services that they offer. So fact number one, in its first year, Sonoma Clean Power, which was the second one formed, had 500,000 customers, and it saved those folks $13.6 million on their bills. So what's that share? You divide that out. That's actual factual savings from the 1 year. Fact two, in LA County, their phase one starts with signing up all the city buildings in the unincorporated areas. They're getting ready to do that starting next spring. Their feasibility study showed, and they did do one, that the city would save $20 million a year from the unincorporated, the buildings in the unincorporated area alone. So that's a savings to the county budget. Okay, next, CCAs help their communities. And I mentioned how the businesses that do and that are involved in energy efficiency and renewables in the local territory benefit from these programs. So here's the fact for that. A study that was done for the city of San Jose found, and here I'm going to quote it, local economic benefit is directly correlated with local renewable energy development. The scenario with the highest level of local solar development yields the greatest number of jobs, 12,000 for the San Jose region over 6 years, and an associated 1.25 billion of incremental economic activity over that same period. So that's where the straight line to community benefit gets tied. Buy locally, build locally, and the jobs will result. Okay, lastly, the environment point. The choice program is the fastest, most cost-effective tool we have to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And this has been shown by a number of feasibility studies. So I'm going to quote the Climate Action Plan for the City of San Diego. It highlights getting to 100% renewables by 2035. That's a darn long time from now. And in doing so, it would reduce 50% greenhouse gas emissions by that same time using the CCA tool. That's what the Climate Action Plan says for the city. And it's estimated to save 1.6 million tons of CO2 by that time. This was 5 times more than the next closest option. Okay, so fact 2, again from the LA County plan. They estimate savings, well, I said this one already, 500,000 tons of greenhouse gas a year from the unincorporated territory alone if they switch them all to a new product. So my last and best story is two facts. And this is the kind of thing that keeps me going here, okay? So in its first year, Sonoma Clean Power cut greenhouse gas emissions by 48%. That's a fact. That's actual, not projected. Now, if you think back to the chart that shows how fast CCAs are growing, and that in the year 2020 they will represent 60% of the load, now imagine if all these areas, 60% of the state of California, were to see a 48% cut in greenhouse gases. I think that matters. You know, in the sixth biggest economy in the country. This is a change that can make a difference.
Does this translate? Oh, sorry.
Yep. Write down her question so she's forgetting. Okay, plan for action. So where are we in the city of San Diego? We've done a feasibility study. It's not perfect, but the point of a feasibility study is to simply pose the question, is it feasible to create a choice program for a city of this size? And the answer was, yes, it is. So there were a variety of assumptions. Many of them were deemed to be on the conservative side, so that even under those conservative assumptions, that is to say, it would all they just don't get me started on what that study didn't do. Nonetheless, it came out to say, yes, it's feasible. There is another alternative that the city is supposedly also looking at. We don't know what it is. It's not been revealed. But at some point, the staff of the city will make a recommendation to the Environment Committee and then to the City Council to proceed to do something. And right now, the understanding is that the something that they are likely to do is to take the next step on the CCA, which is to do a business plan. Basically, not just, is it feasible, but now, how would we do it? That will likely happen probably, yeah, they said year end, but it's probably going to be January, earliest. Okay, San Diego County, and this is where you guys may or may not choose to focus your efforts. Did you know that San Diego County first looked at community aggregation in 2004? And they made some conservative assumptions about the exit fee. And based on those assumptions, they concluded, oh, it's not going to save us money in year 1. So we can't do anything, and they didn't talk about it for 10 more years. Fact of the matter was, it would have made sense, even under those conservative assumptions, a year and a half later. So if they had acted, we would have had 10 years of savings Nonetheless, they then went ahead to this Comprehensive Renewable Energy Plan. Has anyone heard of that? The CREP. It was launched in 2013. Nothing happened for the first 2 years. They basically did a bunch of, scenario planning. They had technical advisory boards. They had public meetings, and they came up in early 2017 with a proposal to the Board of Supervisors. Diane Jacob is very supportive of community choice. And in that meeting, there was no recommendation in the CREP that spoke directly to community choice, but there was a lot of comment from the audience saying, we want to do a community choice plan. So much so that Diane Jacob put a motion on the floor. Let's do a feasibility study on a community choice plan for the county. There was a few negative voices. One of them was Sempra Services. And Diane's motion died for lack of a second. Not only did they not vote, they didn't even discuss it. But what they did say is, well, the city's looking at it, so we'll put it on the docket and come back next year. So your remaining plan is the county climate action plan. Who's following that? Is anybody in here following that? Okay. Because there is a draft out in August, and it identifies greenhouse gas reductions that will be needed, and it lists a whole bunch of strategies. And one of those strategies is strategy E21. And it says, increase renewable energy. And it projects that the goal will be to achieve a 90% renewable energy for the unincorporated county by 2030. So the opportunity there is to comment on this draft plan and say, there's nothing in this that precludes community choice, right? County, you could create templates, you could create an action plan for the unincorporated areas to achieve 90%. This is your plan, this is their reduction target. How are they going to achieve it? A community choice program is the fastest, most economical way to do it. Because the city doesn't have to put out a lot of money. They create the infrastructure, and then we all make the choices. The default product increases in renewables, and we get there. Okay. All right, so now the next part. This is the unpleasant part of the conversation. So what's happening? Okay, back in the day, when Marin was founded, there was a backlash. And unfortunately, we here in San Diego County are faced with an honorable company that has a very high market cap on Wall Street and pays big dividends and is extremely invested in its current business model. It does not want to do community choice. So who can pick out the one there that's actually being said now? These other models all come from PG&E at the time that Marin was founding. PG&E actually even did phone banking to tell people as they were about to get their choice that they didn't want the choice and they should opt out, even before they knew what was going on. Then there was Proposition 16, which was a PG&E funded measure requiring that they were going to kill the CCAs by requiring them to have a 2/3 voter majority before they started one. Right now, it's a vote of the governing body. The city council can start. They spent $45 million to support that Proposition 16. They also spent $50 million just in Marin County. They spent $3.9 million to kill the San Joaquin Power Authority, and they won there. That never got off the ground. They spent $1.6 million opposing the formation of Clean Power San Francisco, so it took them 10 years to get off the ground, but now Clean Power San Francisco is delivering kilowatts to that city. They still lost. The CCA contingent voted no on Proposition 16 by a hefty majority. After that, there were a bunch of reforms. And in 2011, the legislature passed a code of conduct for the investor-owned utilities. They cannot do stuff like this legally. And if they want to speak out, they can only speak out through their parent companies, using shareholder money, not ratepayer money. Okay, and all this was fine until 2015. Because at that point, Sempra said, you know what? We've decided we have a constitutional right to speak out and we need to say our thing. And so we're going to create an independent marketing division and we're going to tell the world what we think about CCAs. And they've started to do that. So the folks, I think there were 2 speakers at the supervisors meeting on February 15th against Diane's motion were Sempra people. All right. Yeah. So the independent marketing division is allowed. They, after a lot of conversation at the CPUC, it does have to be funded by shareholders, not ratepayers, and it's supposed to clearly identify its activities as coming from Sempra and not representing the ratepayers of SDG, and you're supposed to say that right on there. But when they talk about independent voices and coalitions, there's no such disclosure possible when you're sending money to another group who will speak on your behalf. So they have created an independent coalition called the Clear the Air Coalition. And the question I have about independence really would go something like this. Is anybody else putting any money into this? Do any of the coalition members put any money into it? Or is it 100% from Sempra? And the tactics, which now have been reported in the press, they're casting doubt on various positions that the CCA community might hold. They are delaying, want to delay as long as possible. And they're having a lot of one-on-one conversations with electeds. And when they do that, they present information that no one can hear or rebut. So when you hear something like this is another one from Marin, don't let the government choose your energy. That was one of the arguments. When you hear something like that, ask yourself, whose interests are being served here? Because I would suggest to you that what we're seeing in this time of transition, this is capitalism's creative destruction going on. Just like the buggy whip people didn't necessarily want to go out of business when we started driving cars. There's a change happening in this marketplace, and it's coming about because there's a lot of decentralized energy now, and we can all generate our own kilowatt hours, and we want to do it. And we want kilowatts that are cleaner, faster, and their business model. Some of them are trying to change, some of them are not really trying to change that much. So what's happening then is this change is happening kind of to them. So, response. These 2 little things up on the top are questions that Clear the Air is asking. One of them, how much will this really cost energy customers? And it says, okay, right now it's impossible to tell because the CPUC is still determining fee structures and will not have an answer for 18 months. Well, there's a little bit of truth in that. Fee structures actually means the exit fee. And yes, there is a proceeding open on that, but it will actually have an answer by July of 2018, not 18 months, so it's only half a year. Delays may stretch this timeline, that's true, we don't know. But it's also true that these are published values right now. So it's not like people are just going forward with no information. The other issue, is it worth the risk if pending legislation will achieve the same goals? So A, they're hypothesizing risk that hasn't been proven, and B, they're talking about Senate Bill 100, which was up last year and is going to be carried forward. That's going to be a very controversial bill. It's the bill that says the utilities have to reach a renewable portfolio amount of 100%. But there was a lot of other stuff crammed in that bill, and not all of it was pretty. In fact, there were some CCA killer terms in there that the utilities would say, basically, okay, we'll accept your 100%, but you've got to stop the CCAs. You've got to freeze them in their tracks, they said. So there's that kind of stuff that's going to go on. Anyway, and then even if you accept the premise that there are risks with the CCA, where are the benefits? And I would argue that there are many. And even if we put those arguments side by side, I'm still going to vote for a locally controlled, locally responsive, cleaner entity over the current system. Okay, that's the end of my remarks. Now I want to hear your questions. These are just some of the questions that often get raised. We can talk about any of this or anything else. So my question to you would be, what is the choice question that's the hardest to answer? And I'm going to stop right there.
Call the board of supervisors.
Call the board of supervisors. That's exactly right.
She's been so patient. You have something to ask?
Well, I just want to know, this sounds like such a big, wonderful laid out plan. I wonder if it translates to Europe. I wondered if it translated to Europe by any chance.
Oh. Europe has been doing a lot of great stuff on their own. They were 20 years ahead of us on solar. And they are so much further ahead of us on setting climate goals and trying to meet them. So the UK, they are making phenomenal, they are actually, now that the US has decided to pull out of Paris, the UK is going to be leading. I mean, the EU is leading. Okay. Now, people are leaving. Make sure you ask your questions before you go. I went on too long, sorry.
Oh, some of them have another meeting.
Oh, okay.
It's the Land Conservancy.
One thing that I have a difficulty understanding is where does SDG&E get their power from? Do they produce their own power versus a clean, community clean air power? How is it different from where SDG&E produces the power versus they purchase it versus?
They, like all the other utilities, can buy from the wholesale market. They can generate it themselves. They can own their own facilities, and they do. So SDG&E has some facilities, and it buys also from power plants that Sempra owns. And Sempra does own a lot of generation. You know, SDG&E's got the G in there, the gas. You know, they have gas-fired power plants. Sempra owns a lot of renewables also. So one of the interesting things when we talk about the exit fee is the prices that Sempra may be paying, you know, or SDG&E is paying to buy from Sempra. Are they paying the lowest market price, or are they paying a Sempra price?
The reason I ask is SDG&E already has something in place where electricity is produced. So what you're looking at is these community setups setting up systems to produce their power via solar, air, or whatever. So you're looking at like you're duplicating things where in reality you already have a system to produce power, so you should really focus on getting clean air from what you already have rather than duplicating somewhere on a smaller scale.
It's a reasonable point, and SDG&E is now, I think, about 25 or 30% renewable. That means that 70 to 75% of their power is not renewable. It's coming from natural gas-fired plants, coal and oil-fired plants. I don't know what the balance is here. Some of us would say, are resources that will reach the end of their economic life and reach the end of their climate life. That we do not, if given a choice, I would rather have kilowatt hours from something that is not polluting. So that's a piece of the creative destruction. You know, PG&E is going to close Diablo Canyon, right? And when that facility closes, they will not own any more generation. So at that time, they will buy and sell their kilowatt hours from a whole host of sources in the wholesale market and other developers who will develop new facilities for them. And that's another thing I didn't really get into about CCAs. They can choose where their kilowatt hours are coming from. So one of the ones that's recently formed is Redwood Coast Energy Authority, up in the North Country up there. And they are choosing to get a large number, or a good percentage of their kilowatt hours from geothermal wells that are close and biomass energy plants that are in the woods up there. And those biomass energy plants are actually very important because there's a lot of dead wood. And what are they going to do with it? They're going to let it rot on the ground? That's not climate effective. It's not even smart from a forest point of view. But what they can do is they can chip that wood and they can turn it into electricity if the economics are right. By buying from those facilities, the Redwood Coast Energy Authority will have a renewable product, and they will keep those plants operating, and they will keep those jobs there. So that's something that a local community can choose to do. But your question about, okay, SDG&E already has some kilowatt hours under contract. That's absolutely true, they do. And a fraction of those are renewables. That those contracts could be picked up by the CCA if San Diego City were to vote to implement a CCA. They could pick up those contracts, they could buy them. Then they have the difficult decision about what to do with the older facilities, the 70% that they have. Do they retire them? Do they wait till those contracts expire and just not renew them? Do they put them up for auction? There are a lot of different things to do.
So those fires started by, may or may not have been started by the utility lines up north. The power grid in Puerto Rico is going to take years to rebuild. So what I'm asking is CCA going to encourage getting rid of power lines totally? And then is that a goal? And then also is CCA encouraging rooftop solar and batteries, or will it discourage going to that microgrids and independence? And yep.
The CCA will do what its community wants it to do. So if you wanted to get rid of wires, that's going to be a little bit of a stretch, but they are already, the CCAs that already exist are already favoring rooftop solar with higher net metering rates and feed-in tariffs. They are already favoring commercial solar. They are already building plants, new solar and wind and other renewables in their communities, so maybe less wires. Looking down the road, and SDED, my outfit, had a workshop this summer on energy storage in the context of community choice. Because a choice district, basically a little utility, they have access to their customer data. They can say, okay, in our territory, there are X number of businesses with this kind of profile, and they're all getting whacked for demand charges. Let's work with these people to put in storage. That'll benefit the customer. It'll benefit the grid because you don't have to be importing and exporting as much power. You're just going to store it right there on site. And it benefits the CCA because the CCA has the obligation to make sure everybody's got enough power at the right time. So microgrids and storage, they are so on the horizon. And the CCAs are already thinking about how to build this resilient infrastructure that they know we all need and want. There was another point I was going to make, but I went away.
I have a question. I haven't heard too much of the state grid, so-called, that used to kind of set things up in terms of making sure there's enough electricity for everyone. And we had some real problems a number of years ago with some of the big companies failing on us. My concern, though, is you have all these small units getting power, having individual contracts, I assume, with, innumerable types of organizations and, different companies. Is the regulation still going to be there? Is there going to be things out there that will help some small little units that somehow don't quite get it right, and they don't quite get enough energy, and they cut corners, and all of a sudden we don't have electricity? I mean, the things that we're so used to, as much as we probably damn our local energy, most of us feel is going to be around. But when you have so many different out there, each getting their little niche of power, and do we have regulators who will say, if you screw up, we've got a system of backups. If we, if it's too many fires, and the grids aren't working, and the solar cells aren't working, there's energy out there. And I do have read recently that a lot of the energy recently through solar from the big companies had to give the power away because there's no way of storing it. And they end up giving it to, I think, God forbid, Arizona for free. And I'm sure someone's paying for that, which is probably the ratepayers.
Well, that's a big and complicated question.
I'm sorry.
There's a lot going on there. So first, are the regulators still going to be there? Yes, the regulators are still going to be there. The regulators
Do regulate CCA to a certain extent. They regulate every electricity provider on consumer protection issues. So there can't be misrepresentation. If you get stiffed with your bill, they're going to be talking to the PUC. So that whole layer of consumer protection law is absolutely there, and it applies to the CCAs. So that's number one. Number two is regulating the grid's reliability. That's not the CCA's job. That will remain the job of the wires companies, of the big three. They are still regulated. That is still their charge from the CPUC, is to make sure that everyone's grid operates 24/7, 365, safely and economically. And some could argue that they've been spending a lot of time in the last 50 to 100 years focused on where the kilowatt hours come from, because they can leverage that to make money on new transmission lines, versus investing in local infrastructure, which some would say has not been getting the investment it needs. Why do things spark? Why do things go wrong on the delivery side? That's their job, and they need to focus more on that job. And the CPUC will absolutely remain there to make sure that they do that. Now, you asked another question that's very interesting, gets very wonky fast, and that is about the management of the state's grid overall. And the transmission and distribution system is equivalent to the interstate highway system, right, for power. Your local neighborhood system is on the distribution level. That's neighbor to neighbor to neighbor. When you get out of the neighborhood, you start going up into a transmission system that gets progressively bigger. And that is controlled by the California Independent System Operators, called CAISO. The governor names all those people right now. And the governor tells them what they should be doing from a policy point of view. So in terms of reducing the carbon in the electricity system, California policy is pointing them in the right direction. There is, however, a discussion about whether the California system should be expanded. And we could invite in all the western states. And some people say, well, that could be a good thing, because it means that all of the developers of renewables could now sell to Wyoming and New Mexico and all these other places. Maybe that's a good thing. If you care about bringing down greenhouse gas emissions, maybe that's a good thing. But the other side of that coin is that, some of those coal plants could come into California. We wouldn't be able to stop them. And who's voting on this new board would not be people that Governor Brown identifies. They would be from all the states. Their interests, their policy interests, would not necessarily be the same as ours. And there are a lot of ways in which that could get really troubling for CCAs and for renewable energy interests. So we were talking earlier about SB 100. that might pass to say, okay, utilities, you get to have 100% renewable electricity by 2050 or whatever it's going to be. In the fine print of that bill was, oh, and by the way, we're going to expand the whole Western power grid so that we can sell into Wyoming. Not looking at what that would do, or paying insufficient attention, some of us would argue, to what that would do to decision-making about California's climate policies. So, a lot going on in your question, all good. It's a multi-layered system, starting locally with our own little systems on our own rooftops, moving up in scale and moving to the statewide system last. And they all have their own characteristics and their own policies. The CCAs want to operate locally and they want to build locally. And yeah, I think that was the point I was going to make before, that it's those local jobs that we build locally that bring the benefit to CCAs. Okay. Yep.
Thank you. I have two questions. The first one is an easy one. One of your charts showed CCA share of the total kilowatt hours, and there was an actual and there was a projected. Like for 2020, the yellow was a projected, showing a very large percentage. But to me, projected means sometime. It doesn't mean in 2020. Is that? I don't understand that.
Okay, that's an easy one to answer. This study looked at.
Let me get my
Okay.
second question, and you can go back to the easy one. It pertains to Arcadia Power. Do you know anything about Arcadia Power? And if so, how does that compare to a CCA?
Okay. Let me take the easy one first.
Okay. The answer to that first question is that I was quoting a particular study. And that study started out by looking at the projected launch dates of all the CCAs that I've identified so far, and a bunch more that are in various stages, and adding them all up and saying, okay, if this goes forward as these folks have committed, that's what it would look like. And another quote that I didn't read you said, I think it's after 2018, there's an average of 5 new CCAs per year on the drawing boards. So that's where those projections came from. Okay, the second question, Arcadia Power. Well, we're just talking about this today. Okay, disclaimer.
Opt-in, right? It's an opt-in program.
It is, but there are some questions that one should ask. And I have just recently today been informed that there is a new campaign, kind of, Sierra Club was involved with Arcadia and then pulled back, and now there's some new proposals out there. And apparently, and I have been sent but have not studied the material on Arcadia Power, so that's my caveat. I understand that they're selling their new product as a community solar product. Is that right?
All I know about it is a year or more ago, I got something that said, sign up with us, you'll get your electricity and your bill from SDG&E, but it will be 100% renewable. And I did, and it's been working that way, but I've never researched to say is this real or not. I'm
Okay.
just assuming it doesn't cost me anything, and it's
It doesn't cost you anything?
I mean, it's the same bill.
You're paying a little bit more.
SDG&E.
Yeah. Well, that's your bill where it says on it, your power is coming from Arcadia Power,
Right.
right? That's exactly what a bill would look like from a CCA also. It would say your power is coming from, Solana Beach Community Energy or whatever it is. But the thing that's tricky about a product like Arcadia Power is that it's based around what's called a renewable energy credit. And I, full disclosure, back in the year 2000 when we were selling green power in New England and there were not a lot of facilities, I spent a lot of time talking to a lot of people about what is a renewable energy credit. And it is a financial tool that represents the environmental goodness, the emissions replaced or offset or eliminated from every kilowatt hour. So a kilowatt hour has a couple of characteristics. It has the energy characteristic and it has the emissions characteristic.
The renewable energy credit represents the part that's the not energy part. And when you're buying from a renewable energy facility, particularly in the olden days, 10 years ago, when they were more expensive, we described that as you're paying something for the electrons and you're paying this premium for the cleanness. That's what the renewable energy credit represents. Now, a renewable energy credit is an actual thing that is bought and sold and owned and can be retired. And various product companies like Arcadia are building products that is a bunch of electrons from who knows where, and then they go to a renewable facility and say, we want to buy some of your credits. The renewable facility likes that because it means they can sell their kilowatts, their energy, into the system and get the going price. And then they have a second thing to sell, which is the renewable energy credit. Now, I'll tell you who does not like this, and that's the labor unions. If you say Rex to any person associated with labor, they will just turn and walk away because they have associated this financial instrument with the ability to buy renewables without building them here. And that is true. It means you can buy renewable goodness from the rec markets, and you don't have to build it. So labor wants you to build it. They do not want rec products. And it is a source of controversy for many CCAs when they get started. Marin made this mistake. None of the rest of them ever did after that, of buying some renewable energy credits to get started. And it blew up in their face. So now all the CCAs they're just buying carefully from the wholesale market from particular projects that they can identify. It's so-and-so's solar project, and they know exactly where it is, and I have a contract path that is selling me both electrons and the credits, the renewable goodness, and I have a contract for exactly that, and I know exactly what it is, and that's what they're doing now. Until they can make the reserves and start building in their own towns, which is what they're all working toward. But this credit thing, so Arcadia Power is apparently now saying, you can give us your bill, and we will buy the renewable goodness from some of these community solar projects. That's all fine and dandy if they explain to you what they're doing. I have been told, I've not verified this myself, that they are also saying, and if you do that, you don't need a CCA. That's where we get a little bit off the beaten track because these are very different things. You know, the CCA is a local entity with a different set of benefits than just buying from a community solar facility, which is also a good thing to do.
Just an explanation perhaps, is it possible that my good friend here will buy this system, but he's not really buying this wonderful energy from whatever, he's buying a credit that looks like he's doing it. Is that what I kind of get?
So, yes, but the thing to know is, and this is another thing that gets lost because it's very arcane, is those renewable energy credits. No solar or renewable system can sell a kilowatt hour without selling its credits. Because otherwise all it's selling is electrons. And electrons are electrons. They are neutral items. You know, they're not actually, they're charged, but whatever. They are, it's late. They don't have a characteristic, whether they're coming from a coal plant or a nuclear plant. They are all the same. They're just electrons. So this is something that my labor friends tend to miss out on. If you're going to buy from any solar project anywhere, what you are going to be buying is both an electron and a renewable energy credit. That's called bundled. It's bundled renewables. And Arcadia, and again, there's a fine point behind this too, may be buying what's called unbundled renewables. That is to say, they're buying cheap coal for the energy, and then they're buying some renewable from someplace so that they can put together a product that costs lower on the coal side and a reasonable amount on the renewable side, but it's still total lower, so they can make something selling it to you through your bill.
That's not what they said. They say it's 100% renewable.
No, absolutely, they will be. It counts as 100% renewable. Because they're
buying coal and call it renewable.
because it's the energy side that could be coming from coal. And they're just putting the icing, see, this is why it's complicated. They're putting icing on it. They're taking the electrons, wherever they get them from, could be anywhere, and it doesn't matter that much. And then they're putting the icing of the renewable fraction on top, and that's what they're telling you. And the other thing that I would look for in a product like that is whether it's certified by an organization called Green E. And Green E's been around for, we've all been doing this for close to 20 years now, that long. And Green E represents a certification on an electricity product that meets certain criteria. And one of those criteria is that it is from a renewable facility where Green E has validated the contract chain. And they go all the way back to the beginning and they say, okay, we know who built this plant, and yes, your product is coming from Arcadia Power, and it's getting this mix from this plant, and this plant, and this plant, and this plant, and this plant. But all of those together will meet certain criteria. And the reason this is actually important, as arcane as it is because when you ask Sempra how they really feel about renewables, and not renewables, about community choice, and they presented this at a city advisory board a couple of weeks ago, and they said, we actually support community choice when it's done right. And what they mean by that is that we have 100% certainty on all the costs, including the exit fee. But also, they mean when it's making a difference to the air quality. And the challenge is, they will say that CCAs are not building new facilities, they're buying from existing facilities. That is only true, it's a debatable point. Because in many cases, they are actually contracting for construction of new facilities. But that's the point, is are we making this system cleaner and building new things? Green E used to have, it's been a long time since I looked at it, a little piece that said, if you're gonna wear the Green E logo, and you can look at products in the marketplace that have the Green E logo on them, and they say, we are built with 100% clean electricity, Green E certified clean electricity. And that means that not only do they know the contract path for those electrons, but they also know that the facility is in fact new. It's not one that's been, a geothermal plant that was built 20 years ago. It is new by their definition of new. And that matters, because together, this is what makes the system cleaner. So, he thought he was asking a simple question. It's not a simple question. Yep. Obviously, I can talk about this kind of thing all night, so I will stay as long as any of you want to stay.
What is the difference between the CCA model and the PACE program?
Oh, easy, good. You said PACE model, right? PACE is a financing mechanism. PACE stands for Property Assisted Clean Energy. And what it means is that any of you who pay a property tax can essentially get a loan against your property tax for the purposes of doing energy efficiency and clean energy development, repairs, whatever it is. And there are lenders out there, there are banks, that are offering PACE loans. And a PACE loan is appealing because it has a longer term. It generally has a lower interest rate than a market-based loan would have. And you pay it back every 6 months as a little component of your property tax bill. So CCA is a completely different thing. Okay?
I have a follow-up
Yep.
question.
Okay.
I don't think I need a microphone. What would be the advantage to a CCA as opposed to, I actually used the PACE program, White Green was the company, to finance my solar.
Yep.
I'll pay it off in 8 years. My monthly payment is exactly the same as including interest, is exactly the same as my electric bill with SDG&E prior to financing. An 8 years old system. So what would be the advantage to a contract with the CCNA, even if they do ultimately lower their price, electricity charge 5% every year, you ultimately will always be paying your money.
Are you 100%, do you offset 100% of your bill? Yeah. Do you have any excess?
No, because my wife thinks now that we have solar, we get to run the air conditioner.
This actually is a real common thing. I would say there is no problem with doing both of these things. They are not incompatible at all. And CCAs may very well, in the future, offer PACE financing as well. And so, you want to get involved in, well, at least I should not project. I would be someone who would want to do as much solar as possible. And that is until such time as I can afford a loan for my own system, much less my own house, because I don't have an apartment. I would be one of the people who would vote to pay more and get a cleaner choice for a lower price from a CCA. But there's value in all of these things. If everybody had the ability to go get a Y-grade loan and install solar, I would say more power to you. That doesn't eliminate the need for a CCA, in my view, because I would say all the people who cannot put solar in could also benefit from a 100% renewable choice, and we all deserve the local decision-making that goes with this, so that we can say our local CCA offers PACE financing, or it offers, and some of them are doing really innovative things already. They haven't even been around that long, but they're offering loans and incentives for electric vehicles, for example. Sonoma County has really taken on the transportation issue, as has Lancaster, as a matter of fact. They are doing some very interesting things, and they're also very agile and innovative and able to focus on communities of concern, so they can offer particular opportunities to low-income customers. So to me, there is no necessary either-or between PACE and a CCA. Some people will be able to put solar on their roof, some people will not. Okay. Yep. Joy, you get a question? Please fill out your event forms before your feedback forms before you leave.
Thank you.
I just wanted to address how we as a county and some of the smaller cities along the coast would be able to possibly band together to form a larger CCA, so it wouldn't seem like such a big bureaucracy that each one individually would have to sign on to.
Yeah. I think the challenge is that I don't know how the community of Fallbrook makes a decision like that.
Well, we're
We
just,
don't have the power.
yeah, we're at the behest of the county.
So you have to, your focus for action is at the county level. But now, to use the county as examples, many counties have done this. I mean, San Mateo County, not a huge county, not nearly as big as San Diego County, but it had 20 cities in it. And each of those cities voted independently on whether to form their CCA. And every single one of those city councils voted yes unanimously. There was not one negative vote in all 20 of those communities. The problem is, it's not clear who would vote for Fallbrook. You've got to pound on the supervisors, basically. Galvanize yourselves to join with other communities in the unincorporated territories. And the tribes are in the same boat you are. You know, they're not incorporated either in the same way.
I think Fallbrook actually has the largest population in the unincorporated part of the county that is not an Indian reservation and it's not Pemberton.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's true.
So I think that I don't have a better idea for you, just as the tribes are in the same boat. You know, we've been trying to think, what would a CCA look like for a tribe? But under California law, it takes the elected officials to make this decision. It's not clear. You know, it'd be, who's your supervisor?
Bill Warren. Bulldozer Bill.
Is he up for re-election? Or is
No,
he?
he's termed out.
He's turned out, so he's gonna be replaced. Okay, so there's your opportunity. Find the candidate, educate the candidate, show the candidate that you're interested. Diane Jacob badly needs a second, you know. Actually, she needs a third as well.
Right, but if
But-
the other cities would start banding together and voting for it, then we would just be able to latch onto them as the unincorporated county.
They would, the county would have to, but they could. And so your point about banding together, I neglected to mention that, okay, not only is Solana Beach doing it, but Encinitas, Del Mar, Carlsbad, and Oceanside have banded together. They are currently doing a common feasibility study, is the status of it. And they're watching Solana Beach very closely. So Solana Beach's major innovation was basically to get this all done on the backs of their consultants, you know, so they didn't have to pay anything. And that kind of model may have some appeal to some of those other smaller cities as well. Yeah. Okay, almost done? Yep.
You're gonna be here the rest of the night, right?
I'm gonna, I will be here until the last question.
Let's take one
Yeah,
more
go ahead.
question.
Okay, so I was reading that the latest power purchase and agreement for solar or wind, one of the two, was 1.8 cents a kilowatt hour. So it's getting really cheap. So SDG&E is still charging me 20 cents a kilowatt hour. So I can do the math. They're making a lot of money.
That's exactly the math that
And it should be
CCAs are
getting
looking
cheaper
at.
all the time, right?
Should be getting cheaper.
Yeah.
Now, in all fairness, the investor-owned utilities would say, somebody had to buy it 10 years ago when you guys wanted a renewable portfolio standard and the legislature made us do it. So we had to pay these high prices, and that's the calculation that goes into the exit fee. But the sneaky part of that is that market prices for each of those older contracts, how do we determine that? Somebody needs to see some data, and they will all say, oh, can't show you those contracts, that's proprietary. You can't see what we actually paid. I have my own suspicions that there were some buying from Sempra going on, because Sempra has built a lot of renewables. You know, they've got wind in Mexico, they've got solar, they've got a lot of renewable assets. And did they sell them to SDG&E, and was that market price? The market price was what we say it is. And so that is what constitutes the exit fee, and that's why the exit fee is getting fought over a lot. Because there's a lot at stake. These are what are called stranded assets, those contracts, if they are above market. And the utilities, as every good business should, will fight tooth and nail not to get stuck with those costs. And they will go to the CPUC and they will make that argument. Now, I happen to be from another state. I've watched deregulation happen in 2 other states. There are other ways to deal with stranded costs other than make the CCA customers pay for them, which is kind of the deal right now. Okay, anything else? Are we done?
They still want to build more.
I'd like to make a
gas power
comment.
plants, right?
So the Fallbrook Climate Action Team, boy, this thing is loud. Our purpose is to try to get, one of our goals is to get San Diego County to make a climate action plan for unincorporated San Diego County, which is us. And so some of our volunteers have been writing letters about that and visiting the San Diego Board of Supervisors, Planning Commission, talking about that. We've had them here in the past. And then further along those lines is that 2 months from now, in January, we're going to have the Center for Sustainable Energy here with Sullivan Solar, talking about different ways for get solar on people's rooftops. There's a lot of questions about that. And one day, maybe that'll tie into a CCA.
Certainly will, because CCA will pay more for it.
So I want to thank Erika for coming here with her expertise.